Hello and welcome to another episode of Calm the Conflict, the Art of Resolution with myself, Zakia. I'm a commercial litigation solicitor and a debt recovery trainer to businesses, and my co-host, David.
Hi, thanks very much, Zakia. So I'm an accredited mediator. I'm also a practicing disputes lawyer, and I've been working with Zakia, done a couple of mediations with her, and we're going to try and delve down into the depths of what happens in a mediation.
Absolutely. And today we're going to focus on how do you bridge that gap? How do you break deadlock when you're in a mediation and you're close to settlement but not quite there? And I want to get inside the mind of David once again to explore this, David. How do you deal with that with parties when they're close but not quite close enough?
Okay, so interestingly enough, actually, being close but not close enough is quite a good tactic because at that point in time, you're both thinking there's nowhere more to go. And often I see this, laptops are shut, people start shuffling their papers around on the desk because we've done, there's nowhere further to go. And just psychologically, each side closing laptops and putting bits of paper together and getting it, we're going, actually helps to focus people's minds. So at that point in time, I can say that's great. We've got this far. If we're not going to get any further, then thanks very much for your time. Thanks for your patience. You're now going to have to start tearing chunks out of each other and going to litigation and spending loads of amount of money. Alternatively, we can have another half an hour. We've got the time, and see whether we can do something. And just the realization, when both sides do this, and it happens every mediation. Everybody does we're done. They're being unreasonable. We've come up or we've come down. So to have that pressure on the parties doesn't harm.
And what is your style for dealing with that? Because you've seen it hundreds of times over and over and over again. Do you ever get fed up? Do you ever get bored?
No, because I don't get bored. I am, as you know, quite forthright and quite aggressive on the approach. Many litigators are very obstinate individuals.
Thanks.
Thanks. Some better than others. But when it comes to a mediation, different mediators, different styles. Some are more reserved. Some are more well, if we're not going to do it, we're not going to do it. And that might work. But I'd rather say look, we've got this far. We are this close. How can we do it? We've touched upon sort of one or two ideas in the past briefly, closed bids on stuff, which let's not go into that one again. We've done that. But there are other ways.
I do want to go back and touch on that a little bit in a moment. So just keep that at the back of your mind.
Okay. But things like, rather than share, now let's, we've done, we've still got some time to play and both sides are saying, we're going around in circles. So, I can refocus, move the conversation away from where we are to what we've actually achieved. So you've actually come down this far, or the other side have come up this far. That's great. We are making some serious progress here. It's far better than we've ever got before. The process is working.
Yeah.
I told you to bear with the process. I told you it was going to be slow. I told you there are going to peaks and troughs of energy levels go up and down throughout the course of a day. But we are where we are, and we've achieved something really good. Let's not just throw it away. Let's work on this. And if I rephrase the conversation into positives about what we've achieved and where we're going, as opposed to looking where we are, when we started, you can say, well, you were X amount apart before, and now you're so much closer. It's madness. This dispute's a fallout over 5, 10, 20,000 when you've got, an opportunity to get rid of it.
And also that gap, sort of, if you are about £1,000 adrift, trying to close that gap is definitely a lot more easier.
So I would say that if I've got a small gap and it's a lower value claim, it depends on the personalities of the parties. So if you've got someone if it's a personal thing, then again, I need to slightly reframe the question. So if it's a boundary dispute, for example, not a money thing, let's say, for example, and it's neighbours, then it's working on the personalities and saying, actually, it's not about the money. We're not closing the gap on money now. How you can't park the car there, or you can't park the car on a Friday afternoon or on a Saturday or whatever it is. It's then working on what do you really want? How are we going to resolve this daft bit of the which is the equivalent of the £1,000 dispute. Yeah. But all
it
disputes
means so much to those neighbours because they've got to live next door to each other.
Exactly. And I've done a couple of neighbour disputes, and it is, the neighbour disputes are harder because it's not just money, as you say.
Emotion.
It's emotion, and dealing with the emotion. And that's why,
That's my footpath.
Exactly. You can't park on my footpath, or your car's overhanging my driveway, or whatever it is. But that's why it's a case of, look, you started off in a really bad place. You're now in a far better place. Let's just see where we want to be. There's got to be a common interest. You both need to be living together, talking to each other, whatever it is. Let's now drill down on some really silly things and try and tick them off. And it's all progress. So chipping away once you get to that sort of.
Do you ever get parties at the end of a settlement, whatever, whether it's money or resolving a neighbourhood dispute, ever shaking hands and walking away quite politely and sort of amicably? Or is it usually sometimes, the ones that I've done, I think they've just literally walked away. You haven't seen the other party leave the door. One goes before the other. And their paths don't cross.
I think the answer is on neighbour disputes, a resigned acceptance that we are where we are. So we now need to be somewhat more civil, ignoring each other when you're coming out the front door. You don't have to do that anymore. Perhaps just, you can at least nod or acknowledge. You don't have to speak to your neighbours, etc. The commercial ones, the purely money ones, people tend to just be, let's walk away. We're done. I think we've had this conversation. It's share the pain. There's no winner. There's no losers. Both get resolution. You move on. I have had disputes more like adjudication arbitration, where there are running contracts, running issues, where the parties just need to be getting together again. And I have had one where the parties actually worked out the resolution of the mediation was to continue to work together. One side needed something the other had, couldn't get it. They've fallen out, but actually they needed each other. So they did come together, and part of the resolution was that they would do business again and slightly revise.
Was that in a construction case, or
that was a goods supplying of goods and services type of situation? But construction again, exactly where that adjudication arbitrate, where you move on. It's a stage payment, but you need to moving on. So if you can get over that hurdle of, this is where we had problems, we had cash flow issues, we've resolved the cash flow issues, we can do this now. We'll pay the bills and keep moving on. It does work. So there can be a way of, framing positive, finding net positives out of negatives.
I'm intrigued by these neighbourhood disputes. Do you ever get parties where they just decide to sell the house and I cannot live here anymore, and the best thing that we can do for ourselves is to move?
Yes, twice. So
is that drastic?
Yes. So, interesting enough, actually, I did a mediation not too long ago, details of which I can't discuss, but there were two neighbours, and the end of the mediation was one just decided to buy the other.
Oh, okay.
When we very first started off in the very early stage in the morning, one was saying, we want to move, but we can't move because there's this dispute. Don't tell them. Went to the other side, and they're saying we've got we would like to buy this house because we've got a younger child, and that would be quite useful if they moved in next door. And I said, okay, so keep that to back of mind.
Just to summarise, then, how in just a couple of words, closing the gap, that deadlock? Give me a little recap.
Find something positive. Focusing on the achievements, focusing on the successes, and saying, look, you've got this far. Let's not fall over now.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That's another episode done from David and I, and we'll be back with a brand new episode. So keep listening, keep watching, and keep subscribing. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you for listening. This podcast was brought to you by Right Here Creative, a video creative agency based in Oxfordshire. Check them out at rightherecreative.co.uk.